They killed his best friend, a good man, murdered in cold blood. They let the wrong man live. Now, he's out and he's not looking for justice. He's looking for revenge. No rules, no mercy, no forgiveness. Every punch he throws, every bone he breaks, brings him one step closer to the men who took everything from him. This is more than a fight. This is payback. In the bathroom of a penitentiary, Bone is warned by his friend that a gang is coming there to eliminate him. Upon hearing this, he asks the man to step aside so as not to get hurt, and waits until JC and his partner show up. The gang pays one of the guards to turn a blind eye while they surround Bone in the bathroom. JC is holding a sharp object in his hands and attacks the inmate, who quickly picks up the weapon and pierces his opponent's left shoulder. Immediately, the other members of the gang start on him, but Bone knocks each of them out with a single blow. After serving 5 years in prison, Bone is released and needs to find a place to stay. So he goes to Roberto and Tamara's house because they were advertising a room for rent. 3 young people also live there, and Jared, the youngest, is always sitting in front of the window, looking out onto the street. Tamara guides the new resident to his room and tells him that since there are children in the house, Bone needs to follow some rules. He can stay on the condition that he does not get involved with gangs, guns, and illicit substances. Quickly, the ex-con accepts the terms imposed by the woman and pays the rent in advance to ensure that he will keep the room. In Los Angeles, street fights take place every night, and dozens of people go to watch the duels between the fighters. Although illegal, this is an extremely lucrative business for both the challengers and the bettors, who invest a lot of money in who they believe will be the champion. There are also some agents who recruit good fighters to participate in these street fights. Among them, James is the most powerful and influential. Their champion is Hammerman, who enters the ring with Cowboy, a much smaller fighter than him but much faster. However, Speed is not able to free Cowboy from the clutches of one of the most brutal fighters that has ever passed through that ring. Hammerman is about to eliminate his challenger when Pinball stops the fight and announces his victory. The man then hands the money to James since his challenger lost the fight after being completely defeated. Pinball goes back to his car and is surprised by Bone, who is in the back seat waiting for him. The fighter says that he wants to fight Hammer and offers 40% of the profits so that the man can schedule that fight. However, Pinball has already lost a lot of money and decides to test Bone's skills before putting him in a duel against James's best fighter. This being the case, he goes to another agent and wagers some money so that Bone has a chance to get into a fight. After watching his challenger, Bone sets up for the attack and, with a head kick, manages to take him down with ease. After this blow, the man can no longer stand up, so Pinball takes the bet money and leaves with his new champion. On the way home, while Pinball is planning his next fights, Bone asks what he knows about the woman who was together with James. His agent then directs him to stay away from Angela and tells him that she was married to another guy until James set him up to get him arrested. After that, the man took the woman as his girlfriend. But Angela was about to have a baby at that time, and James made her put the child up for adoption. To support her miserable life, Angela began using illegal substances and eventually became an addict. The next day, James is preparing some pieces of meat to give to his dogs when Teddy shows him a recording they made of Bone's fight, in which he defeated his opponent with just one kick. James is impressed and plans to talk to Pinball about his new champion. Before that, however, he goes to feed his dogs and asks Teddy to accompany him. He then orders the pit bulls to attack him. However, he does this only to scare him, as he continues to hold the dogs by the collar. That afternoon, Bone is playing chess with Roberto on the porch when Pinball parks his car in front of the house and calls the fighter. Just then, Bone has just won the game and takes the money from the bet he made with Roberto before leaving. When he arrives at the arena, the fighter is faced with a duel of women and Pinball tells him that he has had a relationship with one of them. Minutes later, this girl is knocked out and Veretta is announced the winner. At the end of the fight, Pinball goes to talk to Tattoo, and the agent who has the best fighters in that area. He tells him that he has found a new fighter and bets $5,000 on him. This time, Bone must face Gold Teeth, and once again, with a single blow, he manages to knock him out. This remarkable feat makes him known as the one-hit fighter. However, when Pinball goes to get the money, Tattoo makes a new demand. Bone will have to fight 2 challengers at once for double the stake. The fight has barely started, and Bone already knocks out one of his opponents with a kick. Soon after, he knocks out the second fighter and breaks his arm with a wrench. Unable to believe what has happened, Tattoo doubles the bet again and this time sends 3 fighters at Bone. However, within seconds, they all meet the same fate as their colleagues who entered the ring with the ex-convict. Furious, Tattoo refuses to pay the $20,000 he owes after doubling the bet twice and keeps the money in his pants. The man challenges Bone to take that money and ends up going down as the fighter knocks down everyone who tries to stop him from approaching Tattoo and makes his way while using his skills to strike those guys. After punching the deadbeat, Bone rips off his pants and takes the money. Veretta is impressed with the man's performance and gives him her phone number. As the pair get into the car, Pinball congratulates Bone on the fight and says he has never seen anything like what happened that night. While the 2 business partners are talking, Tattoo appears with a machine gun and starts shooting at them. Immediately, Pinball speeds up the car, and both manage to get out of the place unharmed. From that day on, the duo starts earning a lot of money with street fights, and Bone uses all his time outside the ring to practice his Tai Chi. Wherever he goes, the fighter impresses with his unique fighting style, and his fame begins to grow. He is known to be totally invincible in a duel, no matter how strong and prepared his opponent is. One night, when he arrives home in the middle of the night, Tamara notices that Bone has a wound on his forehead, and his shirt is stained with blood. Concerned, the woman asks him to sit down so she can bandage his wound. Bone asks why Tamara is up at that hour, and the woman reveals that she needs to wake up early to make breakfast for the children before going to work. Although they are not her biological children, she does her best to take care of those youngsters and prevent them from becoming outcasts. When asked why Jared is always looking out the window, Tamara reveals that the boy, who has been with her for a year, is always waiting for his parents to come back for him. Tamara doesn't know the whereabouts of his mother, but knows that his father is in jail. Bone was about to go upstairs to his room when the woman asks where he learned to practice Tai Chi. She says she's always been interested but never found anyone who could teach her. So Bone decides to help her practice and teaches her how to do some of the moves. Later in the afternoon, when she looks out the window, Tamara sees the wrestler teaching Jared some moves and feels happy about the relationship they are building. As usual, before Pinball shows up to take him to fight, Bone plays chess with Roberto, and this time, it is he who loses the match. Meanwhile, James continues to terrorize everyone who gets in his way. This time, a woman named Monique is the target. She has been accused by one of James's partners of acting dishonestly, so she ends up being persecuted. Knowing that the man will not give her any chance to explain herself, Monique runs away and tries to climb a metal railing. However, before she could escape, James speeds up his car and runs her over, staining his entire windshield with blood. As he is leaving the place, the man runs into Roberto and realizes that he may have seen what happened that night. Hammer will face Bone in a fight. As usual, before entering the ring, the fighter takes several substances that enhance his strength and agility. After speaking with James, Pinball introduces that night's main attraction, and the two fighters get into position for the duel. Hammer initiates the attack, but Bone manages to dodge his blows and lands a few punches on his opponent. After taking several blows, Hammer is knocked down but soon manages to get up. However, he is met with a sequence of punches and kicks that knock him down permanently, causing Bone to win another fight. At that point, Pinball goes to collect the debt from the bet, and after handing over the money, the businessman goes to talk to Bone. James congratulates him on his impeccable movements and states that he's never seen anything like it in his entire life. He then invites the fighter and his agent to his home to celebrate his victory and talk business. Knowing that James is a dangerous guy, Pinball tries to decline the invitation, but Bone says it will be a pleasure to visit him. A few days later, the businessman receives the pair at his home and introduces Angela to Bone. The woman ignores him, but James notices that the fighter keeps looking at her. While Pinball goes to get a drink, James calls Bone over to see the room where he trains in martial arts. The businessman says that he has always admired good fighters and believes that a warrior's life should be pure in body and spirit. For this reason, he does not drink, smoke, or swear. The man presents his collection of swords to the fighter and asks if he knows how to use them. However, Bone claims to have no skill with any kind of weapon. After a few minutes of conversation, James reveals the real reason he invited the fighter to his home. He says he knows a guy named Franklin McVeigh, who is the manager of a great fighter. Despite his ordinary and not at all intimidating appearance, Price has already eliminated 4 opponents in the ring and, after years of career, has won the title of best fighter in the world. To get in the ring with him, the challenger needs to fork over a cool $5 million, and James is willing to pay that amount so that Bone can fight. The problem is that the fighter needs to go up in rankings until he reaches the level to challenge him. However, James believes that he will be able to convince Franklin to arrange this fight. Therefore, he asks Bone to face Price in a duel, with the promise that if Bone wins, he can retire with a lot of money. Although this is a tempting proposal, Bone does not accept it immediately and says he will think about it. At the end of the meeting, James spots Angela looking for something on a dresser and approaches her. In her hands, there was the illegal substance the woman was looking for, and James says that if she wants to get that vial back, she will have to do him a favor. James intends to induce Bone to accept his proposal, and to do so, asks Angela to help him seduce him. However, the woman does not agree to get involved with the fighter, and James uses threats to force her to do as he ordered. Knowing that her life is at stake, even against her will, Angela invites Bone to her room and, arriving there, threatens him with a gun. However, she is surprised when the fighter pulls out a photo from his pocket and states that, in his last words, Danny asked him to take care of his wife and son. Upon seeing the photo of her former family, Angela becomes so nervous that she begins to feel ill, and then asks how Bone met her husband. The fighter then tells how he met Danny in prison, and they became great friends. However, one day, when they were meeting to play chess, Danny was attacked by JC and his gang. Bone watched his friend get drilled to death and could do nothing to save him. Before he died, the man gave that photo to him and asked Bone to take care of his family when he got out of prison. Upon discovering the truth, Angela recounts that she knew all along that James set Danny up to be with her. She also knew that if she refused him, the man would have eliminated Danny and her son. After so many years, the woman does not know where her son is and has no idea if he is still alive. However, to her belief, Bone claims to know where the boy is and promises that he will take Angela to him. After a few minutes, the two leave the room and find James. Bone asks the businessman to leave Angela with him for a few days, and James says he will accept the offer if the fighter can reciprocate it. Bone says he will return the favor, and James orders Angela to pack her things. That same night, the fighter refers her to a rehab clinic and promises that he will take the woman to see her son as soon as she can get rid of her addiction. The next morning, James pays a visit at Franklin's mansion and takes the $5 million to put Bone in a fight against Price. After a few minutes of a tense conversation, the millionaire states that he will schedule the fight. However, if James disappoints him, Franklin states that he will make sure to send him back to the suburbs in 3 days. Some of his partners will stay in his house, and Bone should be ready for the fight. It is late at night when the ex-convict arrives home to find Roberto's body on the floor. The place is surrounded by police officers investigating the crime scene. Immediately, Bone rushes to Tamara's room to check on her, and the woman tells him that 2 pit bulls have been unleashed on him. In his last minutes, Roberto has been chewed up like a piece of meat. The fighter tries to calm the woman down, and they end up sleeping together that night. Hours later, the couple is awakened by Jared. The boy says that a man has shown up looking for Bone, and Tamara gets up scared. When the woman and the man leave the room, James excitedly tells them that he has managed to schedule a fight against Price. Bone claims that he never said he would fight. He recalls having said he would think about it and decided not to enter the duel. Furious, James tries to draw his sword, but is stopped by Bone, who attacks him and throws the weapon away. James then takes Tamara hostage and threatens to shoot her. However, he is afraid of what Bone might do and decides to leave without hurting anyone. As soon as the man leaves the house, Bone hands Tamara some money and asks her to take the children to a hotel until he contacts her. Once in his car, James orders Teddy to activate his team of killers to act within 15 minutes. Then Hammer goes after Pinball and attacks him to get him to reveal Bone's location. But the agent says absolutely nothing. Minutes later, Bone shows up and steals the gun from one of the bandits. During the exchange of fire, the fighter manages to eliminate that entire group and helps his friend get up. While looking for Angela, Teddy meets a woman who claims to have seen her at the rehab clinic where she was admitted. However, when they go after her, Teddy and his team are surprised by Pinball, who comes out from under the blanket with 2 pistols in his hands. Bone then shows up and eliminates those guys. When James calls one of his men to confirm that they have caught Angela, Bone answers and states that he's going after him. In order to lure him into the fight against Price, James sends his location and drives quickly to Franklin's house, where his associates are gathered to watch the fight. When Bone arrives on the scene, he breaks into the mansion and is surprised by a butler who is holding a rifle in his hands. Gently, the man guides him into the courtyard, where there are numerous guards fully equipped to eliminate him if necessary. In front of his greatest enemy, Bone confronts him and accuses James of taking Roberto's life. Upon hearing this, the businessman claims that the old man knew too much, so he had to eliminate him. Not satisfied, the fighter gets James to admit that he set Danny up to get arrested and discreetly tapes the entire confession. He then sends the video to Pinball, who sends the recording to the police. At that moment, Price appears and invites his opponent to the fight. The fight begins, and the audience can barely follow the fast movements of the fighters. The fight begins with a draw in which both challengers receive violent blows and demonstrate great martial arts skill. At one point, however, Price takes his opponent to the ground and throws an arm lock. With his torso immobilized, Bone lands a knee to the head of his opponent and manages to get free. Immediately, the two stand up and Price begins to become unsettled as he is facing the strongest opponent he has ever faced. Now, he is no longer able to defend himself against the attacks and ends up being knocked down. Just as he was about to break one of Price's legs, Bone gives up the fight, handing the victory to his opponent. Furious at having lost $5 million, James attacks the fighter and draws his sword. Bone manages to dodge the blows, and Franklin orders one of his men to throw a sword so that the fighter can defend himself. In this instant, Bone demonstrates that, contrary to what he said to James, he has great skill with the sword, and decides to use only the sheath to attack him. Despite this, James is unable to land a single blow on his enemy, and after several attempts ends up cutting his own fist with his sword. At this moment, the police appear and Bone escapes. Months later, Angela leaves the rehab clinic and goes to meet her son. Jared is extremely happy to see his mother for the first time, and Angela says she will never leave him again. That same day, Bone decides to leave as he feels he has completed his mission. Before leaving, he informs her that he left an envelope with money for Tamara and asks her to let Angela live there with Jared for a while. While walking down the stairs, the fighter runs into Pinball and says goodbye to his former agent. Now, Bone can go on his way with a clear conscience that he has fulfilled the promise he made to his friend. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Sigma Recaps, where every movie has a deeper meaning and every character has something to prove. Got a film you want us to break down next? Drop it in the comments. We're watching.